If a lonely man walks into the wrong town, sometimes the town decides he belongs to it. The shuttle groaned as it descended through the neon storm, its thin metal frame rattling hard enough to vibrate through Lucas Reed's boots. Outside the scratched cockpit glass, lightning crawled sideways across thick violet clouds, illuminating the mining moon below in brief flashes of electric blue. The colony looked half-drowned in rain and industrial smoke. Rusted refinery towers stabbed into the darkness while long trains of cargo lights crawled slowly across distant ridges like glowing insects. Lucas rubbed a tired hand over his face and checked the fuel gauge again. Empty. Of course it was. Just my luck, he muttered. The automated navigation system crackled through static before dying completely. He guided the shuttle down manually, jaw tight, eyes burning from nearly 14 straight hours in space. His shoulders ached beneath his weatherproof jacket, and recycled cabin air had left a metallic taste in the back of his throat. He didn't care about the storm. He didn't care about the colony. Right now, he wanted 3 things: a hot meal, a bed, and 8 uninterrupted hours unconscious. The landing struts slammed onto wet pavement with a hiss of steam. Rain immediately exploded across the windshield in glowing silver streaks. Lucas grabbed his duffel bag from the floor, shrugged into his coat, and stepped into the storm. Cold water soaked through his dark hair almost instantly. The mining port smelled like ozone, engine coolant, and overheated machinery. Huge alien cargo haulers towered overhead while steam rose from drainage vents beneath his boots. Workers moved through the storm wearing reflective cloaks and breathing masks, their silhouettes warped by drifting neon signs written in symbols Lucas couldn't read. Nobody paid attention to him at first. Then somebody did. A tall woman standing beside a fuel terminal froze mid-conversation. Her gold eyes locked onto him. Then another. Then another. Lucas slowed slightly as nearby voices faded one by one. Strange. The sensation crawled across his skin before he fully understood it. People were staring. Not casually. Not curiously. Intensely. Every female face within sight seemed to turn toward him at once. A pair of alien dockworkers stopped unloading cargo. Someone near the customs gate dropped a data tablet with a sharp clatter. Lucas frowned beneath the rain. Okay, he murmured. He'd traveled enough systems to recognize cultural weirdness when he saw it, but this felt different. Heavy. Focused. Like he'd accidentally walked onto a stage. He adjusted the strap on his bag and kept moving toward the nearest illuminated building at the end of the street. A flickering sign buzzed above the entrance. The Hollow Vale Inn. Warm orange light spilled through fogged windows. Perfect. The moment he stepped inside, heat rolled across his damp skin. The inn smelled like spice root tea, machine oil, and something faintly floral underneath it all. Conversation stopped instantly. Lucas slowly removed his hood as silence spread across the room like spilled ink. Every occupant inside was female. Every single one. Different species. Different heights. Different skin tones glowing softly beneath hanging lanterns. But all of them stared directly at him. A low pulse of music hummed somewhere in the background while rain tapped softly against the windows. Lucas gave an awkward half-smile. He said carefully. You guys got any rooms available? Nobody answered. Then, from behind the long metal counter, a tall woman rose slowly to her feet. She had pale violet skin that shimmered softly under the warm lights and silver hair braided over one shoulder. Her golden eyes never blinked as they studied him. She was beautiful in the dangerous way lightning was beautiful. Calm, silent, powerful. Lucas suddenly became very aware of the sound of his own breathing. The woman stepped closer. Human, she said softly. Her voice carried easily through the silent inn. You came here alone? Lucas nodded once. Just passing through. Her gaze drifted over him slowly, not flirtatious exactly, but curious in a way that tightened something uncomfortable in his chest. You should not have landed during storm season, she said. Lucas let out a tired laugh. Trust me, that wasn't the plan. For the first time, the corner of her mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. Something smaller. More private. Then she reached beneath the counter and removed an old-fashioned metal room key. One room remains, she said quietly. You may stay the night. Lucas exhaled in relief. Thank God. But as he reached for the key, another woman near the back of the inn suddenly stood up too fast, her chair scraping hard across the floor. Her eyes stayed fixed on Lucas with unsettling intensity. "No," she said sharply. "He cannot stay with you, Veilira." The room temperature seemed to drop instantly. The silver-haired woman, Veilira, never looked away from Lucas as she answered. "He already is." The silence inside the inn stretched so long Lucas could hear rainwater dripping from the edge of his coat onto the metal floor. Nobody moved. Nobody even blinked. The woman near the back still stood rigid beside her overturned chair, her silver jewelry trembling softly against dark blue skin as she stared at him with open frustration. Veilira remained calm behind the counter, one hand resting lightly near the old room key. "He already is," she repeated quietly. Something unspoken passed through the room after that. A silent conversation Lucas could not understand. Several women looked away first. Others muttered beneath their breath before returning to their drinks. The tension did not disappear, but it folded inward like heat retreating beneath ash. Lucas glanced between them carefully. "Okay," he said slowly. "I feel like I missed a very important memo somewhere." The woman near the back exhaled sharply through her nose before grabbing her coat. "You should leave before midnight, human," she warned. "This station changes during the storm." Then she disappeared into the rain outside, the door hissing shut behind her. Lucas watched her go before turning back toward Veilira. "Friendly place." Veilira slid the metal key across the counter toward him. "You are unfamiliar with frontier colonies. I am beginning to notice that." Up close, she was even taller than he first realized, nearly 6.5 feet. Her posture impossibly straight beneath loose dark fabric that shimmered faintly under the lantern light. A subtle silver glow traced beneath her skin whenever she moved near the hanging heaters. Not bioluminescence exactly. Something softer, warmer. Lucas picked up the key. Her fingers brushed his for less than a second. Heat rushed across his hand immediately. He looked up in surprise. Veilira pulled her hand back almost too quickly. "Sorry," she said quietly. "My body temperature runs higher than yours." Lucas gave a tired smile. "No kidding." Her golden eyes lingered on his face another second too long before she looked away. "Strange woman. Stranger reaction." "Kitchen is still open," she said. "You should eat before the storm worsens." Lucas nodded gratefully and slid onto one of the stools near the counter. His knees cracked from exhaustion. The room smelled richer now that he was inside the warmth. Cooked grain, citrus spice, steam rising from heated pipes beneath the floor. He had spent the last 6 months hauling damaged cargo routes between mining systems, sleeping in cramped shuttle cabins, and eating ration bars that tasted like powdered cardboard. Right now this place felt dangerously close to heaven. Veilira placed a steaming bowl in front of him a few minutes later. Thick broth filled with sliced root vegetables and strips of slow-cooked protein released clouds of fragrant steam into the air. Lucas nearly groaned at the smell alone. "You made this?" he asked. "Yes." He took one bite and closed his eyes briefly. "Wow." Something shifted in Veilira's expression again. Tiny, curious, almost pleased. Lucas pointed his spoon toward her slightly. "That reaction right there means either I insulted your cooking or nobody here compliments people enough. Compliments are uncommon." "That is depressing." A faint sound escaped her then. Not exactly laughter. More like she almost remembered how. Lucas continued eating while the inn slowly returned to low conversation around him, though he still caught people glancing toward him every few seconds. Some openly, some carefully. He leaned closer toward Veilira and lowered his voice. "Seriously though, why does everybody keep staring at me?" Veilira dried a glass slowly without answering at first. Rain hammered harder against the windows outside, neon reflections rippling across her pale skin. Finally, she said, "Because human males do not come here." Lucas blinked once. "Okay. Most leave the inner systems quickly." "Still okay." She met his eyes directly then. "And because there has not been an unattached male on this station in almost 7 years." Lucas slowly lowered his spoon. Somewhere behind him, someone dropped a utensil with a loud metallic clink. Veilira's voice softened almost to a whisper. "You walked into a colony full of lonely women during storm season, Lucas Reed." She tilted her head slightly. "And none of them expected you to be real." Lucas stared at Veilira for several long seconds while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the station walls. The warm broth suddenly sat heavier in his stomach. "You are telling me," he said carefully, that I accidentally landed in the middle of some kind of social drought. Veilira tilted her head slightly, silver hair catching the lantern glow. That is an unusually accurate description. Lucas leaned back on the stool and laughed quietly under his breath. Not because it was funny, because sometimes exhaustion reached a point where reality stopped sounding real anymore. Fantastic, he muttered. I leave civilized space for 2 weeks and somehow end up in the universe's weirdest mining colony. A faint ripple of amusement crossed Veilira's face again. She seemed fascinated by every expression he made, as if she were studying a language she had only read about in books. Around them, conversation inside the inn remained low and tense. Lucas could still feel eyes drifting toward him every few moments. Not hostile exactly. Curious. Focused. Like he was something fragile people were afraid to scare away. He hated it. So what? He asked quietly. Your colony just does not have men? Veilira folded a towel carefully behind the counter before answering. Not naturally. Our species suffered a genetic collapse generations ago. Male births became increasingly rare until most frontier systems stopped expecting them entirely. Lucas frowned. That sounds bad. It nearly ended us. Her voice stayed calm, but something colder moved underneath it now. Many colonies adapted by restructuring society around female population groups. Partnerships became regulated. Bonding contracts became political. Lucas rubbed his jaw slowly. And humans? Veilira's eyes lifted toward him again. Humans are genetically compatible with several outer rim species. Lucas nearly choked on the last sip of broth. Excuse me. A few nearby women glanced over immediately. Veilira lowered her voice. Your species spread through the trade systems quickly. Most human males avoid isolated colonies because attention becomes, she searched for the word, complicated. Lucas stared at her in disbelief. Nobody puts this stuff in travel advisories. Most humans do not travel this far alone. Before Lucas could answer, the front door suddenly slid open with a hiss of cold air and neon rain. 3 women entered together wearing dark storm cloaks shimmering with water droplets. The moment they spotted Lucas, all 3 stopped walking. One of them inhaled sharply. Another whispered something under her breath Lucas could not understand. Veilira's shoulders visibly tightened. Upstairs, she said quietly to Lucas. Now. Lucas blinked. What? Please. The word surprised him more than the urgency in her voice. He looked toward the newcomers again. Their eyes stayed locked onto him with unsettling intensity. One smiled slowly. Not flirtatious. Possessive. Every instinct Lucas had developed hauling freight through dangerous systems suddenly woke up at once. He stood immediately. Right. Upstairs sounds good. Veilira moved around the counter before the other women reached them. Up close, Lucas noticed her hands trembling slightly beneath the loose sleeves of her dark clothing. Strange. The innkeeper who had looked perfectly calm 5 minutes ago now seemed deeply unsettled. She guided him quickly toward a narrow staircase at the back of the inn while low voices rose behind them. Lucas caught fragments. Human. Unbonded. During storm season? Impossible. His pulse ticked faster as they climbed. Veilira, he said under his breath. What exactly happens during storm season? She stopped halfway up the stairs. Neon lightning flashed through the nearby window, washing silver light across her pale skin. For one brief moment, Lucas saw genuine fear in her golden eyes. Loneliness becomes difficult for our kind during the storms, she said softly. Hormones rise. Instincts intensify. Emotional restraint weakens. Lucas swallowed once. You are doing a terrible job making me feel better right now. Veilira looked at him for another long second before quietly admitting, I am trying very hard not to scare you. Somewhere downstairs, laughter echoed softly through the inn, but it no longer sounded warm. It sounded hungry. Veilira resumed climbing the stairs quickly. Lock your room tonight, she whispered. And Lucas, he looked up at her. Her voice dropped almost to nothing. Do not open the door for anyone except me. Lucas had stayed in dangerous places before. Cargo stations controlled by smugglers. Mining colonies with failing oxygen systems. One refinery moon where half the workers carried shock batons because the local wildlife could chew through steel doors. But none of those places had ever made him lock a bedroom door because of loneliness. The room Veilira gave him sat at the very top of the inn beneath slanted metal ceilings warmed by humming heat pipes. It was surprisingly clean. Soft amber lights glowed from recessed panels in the walls, while rain rattled steadily against the narrow window overlooking the neon streets below. Somebody had placed folded blankets neatly at the end of the bed. The air smelled faintly like cedar and the same floral scent that lingered around Veilira. Lucas dropped his duffel bag beside the bed and immediately checked the door lock twice. Solid. Good enough. Probably. He exhaled slowly and rubbed both hands down his face. What kind of insane place did I land on? He muttered to himself. Thunder rolled outside again, low and distant, vibrating through the walls like the breathing of something enormous. Downstairs, muffled voices drifted faintly upward through the pipes and floor grates. He could not make out words anymore, only tones. Soft, excited, restless. Lucas sat on the edge of the bed and pulled off his damp boots with a tired groan. Every muscle in his body felt heavy from weeks in transit. Normally, exhaustion hit him fast after a long haul. Tonight, his nerves refused to settle. His thoughts kept replaying Veilira's warning. Emotional restraint weakens. The way she said it had not sounded seductive. It sounded ashamed. A sudden knock froze him instantly. 3 soft taps against the door. Lucas looked up sharply. Silence followed. Then Veilira's voice came through the metal. It is me. Lucas stood and unlocked the door carefully. Veilira stepped inside, carrying a steaming metal tray. The scent of herbal tea filled the room immediately. She closed the door behind her faster than necessary before handing him the tray. For sleep, she explained quietly. The storm causes anxiety in humans unfamiliar with the magnetic activity here. Lucas accepted the cup gratefully. Thanks. Their fingers brushed again. Heat spread across his skin immediately, stronger this time. Veilira inhaled softly and pulled her hand back. Lucas frowned slightly. You okay? Yes. The answer came too quickly. She moved toward the window instead, keeping a careful distance between them. Outside, silver rain streaked endlessly past the glass while distant refinery lights flickered through thick fog. Lucas watched her quietly for a moment. Without the crowded and downstairs, she seemed different up here. Smaller somehow beneath the silence. Less controlled. You keep acting like I am going to panic and run away, he said finally. Veilira remained facing the storm outside. Most do. Lucas blinked. Most human men? Most males. Her voice softened. Our instincts can be overwhelming during storm season. Many outsiders misunderstand us. Lucas leaned back against the wall beside the bed, warming his hands around the tea. You have not done anything wrong. Veilira laughed quietly under her breath, though there was no humor in it. You do not know that yet. For a few seconds neither spoke. The only sounds were rain against the glass and the low hum of heating pipes beneath the floor. Lucas studied her carefully in the warm amber light. The silver glow beneath her skin pulsed faintly now, almost like a heartbeat. Beneath water. Beautiful, but exhausted too, like she had been holding tension inside herself for a very long time. Veilira, he said gently, are you afraid of me? She turned toward him immediately, startled by the question. No. Then why do you keep looking at me like you expect something bad to happen? Her golden eyes lowered slightly. Because I am afraid of myself. Lucas stared at her in confusion, just as another distant knock echoed somewhere downstairs. Multiple voices followed this time. Louder now. Excited. Veilira stiffened instantly. Lucas noticed the subtle change in her breathing. Faster. Uneven. She moved toward the door and pressed one glowing hand lightly against the metal as if listening through it. They know you are here, she whispered. Lucas set the tea down slowly. Who? Veilira looked back at him, and for the first time since meeting her, he saw a genuine panic flicker behind those golden eyes. Everyone. The hallway outside Lucas's room had gone completely silent. No footsteps. No voices. Somehow that felt worse. Veilira remained near the door listening carefully while silver rain flashed against the narrow window behind her. The soft amber lighting inside the room painted warm gold across her pale skin, but it did nothing to ease the tension tightening her shoulders. Lucas stepped closer carefully. Okay, he said quietly. Talk to me like I am the only human idiot who accidentally wandered into this situation. Veilira closed her eyes briefly before answering. Storm season affects emotional regulation for my species. Increased atmospheric pressure alters hormone activity. Isolation becomes painful. Lucas folded his arms loosely. So everybody downstairs is emotional because of the weather? Not only emotional. Her voice lowered further. Attached instincts become stronger. Bonding drives intensify. Lucas exhaled slowly through his nose. You keep saying bonding like it is supposed to mean something terrifying. Veolyra finally turned toward him. For many species in this sector, emotional attachment is biological. Physical closeness calms neural stress responses. Companionship stabilizes us. She hesitated slightly before, adding, an unattached male presence during storm season creates competition. Lucas stared at her for a moment before letting out one disbelieving laugh. You are telling me this entire colony is basically losing its mind because everybody is lonely? Veolyra looked genuinely confused by his reaction. Loneliness is not a small thing, Lucas read. That answer hit harder than he expected. The room fell quiet again except for the storm outside. Lucas looked away first. Maybe because she said it so softly. Maybe because he understood it too well. 6 months hauling cargo routes alone through empty systems had taught him exactly how loud silence could become. He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. Yeah, he admitted quietly. I guess I know that part. Something in Veolyra's expression shifted immediately. Not attraction. Recognition. Like two exhausted travelers briefly spotting each other through fog. Another distant sound echoed downstairs. Furniture moving. Low voices. Veolyra stiffened again. Lucas noticed her hands trembling faintly at her sides. Have you eaten tonight? He asked suddenly. She blinked once, caught off guard by the question. What? Food. Did you eat? I know. Lucas pointed toward the door. Well, there is your problem. Veolyra stared at him in confusion while he moved toward his duffel bag and pulled out a small sealed container from inside. Emergency field rations. Not exciting, but edible. He walked past her toward the small heating unit built into the room wall. Humans get irrational too when we are stressed and hungry, he said while opening the pack. Usually less graceful about it. Veolyra watched silently as he heated the ration meal. Warm, savory steam slowly filled the room. You are cooking? She asked carefully. That is a generous description. Lucas grabbed 2 utensils from the nearby shelf and split the meal evenly into separate bowls without thinking about it. He handed one toward her. Veolyra did not take it immediately. Her golden eyes stayed fixed on the bowl as though he had offered her something dangerous. What? Lucas asked. Did I accidentally insult your culture again? She accepted the bowl slowly, fingertips. Brushing his hand. Heat spread sharply through both of them this time. Veolyra inhaled softly, but did not pull away immediately. You shared your meal? She whispered. Lucas frowned slightly. Yeah. Her voice dropped almost too quiet to hear. No one has done that for me since I was young. Lucas suddenly felt very aware of the storm outside. The loneliness in her voice carried a weight much older than tonight. He leaned back against the wall beside her and started eating casually. Well, he said gently, that seems like everybody else's mistake. Veolyra stared down at the warm food in her hands for several silent seconds before finally taking a bite. The silver glow beneath her skin flickered softly. Then, to Lucas's complete surprise, her eyes closed for just a moment like the simple warmth of the meal physically hurt her. This is terrible, she said quietly. Lucas grinned. I know. For the first time since he arrived on the station, Veolyra laughed openly. Soft, breathless, real. And downstairs beneath the floorboards, the restless voices slowly began to quiet. Lucas woke sometime later to the sound of glass rattling softly in its frame. For a few disoriented seconds he forgot where he was. Then the scent hit him. Rain, heated metal, and that strange silver floral warmth lingering in the room. The storm outside had grown stronger. Neon lightning flashed beyond the narrow window in long silent pulses while deep thunder rolled beneath the station like shifting tectonic plates. Lucas pushed himself upright slowly from the edge of the bed. He had not meant to fall asleep fully dressed. His neck ached from the awkward angle. The room was darker now except for the low amber lights along the walls. Veolyra was gone. At first he thought she had returned downstairs. Then he noticed the second bowl still sitting untouched near the heating unit. Cold. A faint metallic creak echoed somewhere deeper inside the inn. Lucas frowned. Something felt wrong. He stood and opened the door carefully. The hallway beyond was empty, washed in dim emergency lighting. Warm air drifted through the corridor carrying faint static electricity that prickled against his skin. Another. Sound reached him then. Breathing. Uneven. Sharp. Lucas followed it instinctively toward the far end of the hall, where a faint silver glow pulsed beneath a partially closed door. Veilira. No answer. He stepped closer carefully and heard the sound again. Not crying. Not exactly. More like someone trying very hard to stay quiet while struggling to breathe normally. Lucas pushed the door open slightly. The room beyond was small and dark, lit only by stormlight spilling through thin curtains. Veilira sat on the floor beside the bed with both hands pressed tightly against her ribs. Her silver hair hung loose around her shoulders while trembling light flickered visibly beneath her skin. She looked up immediately, startled. "You should not be here," she whispered. Lucas ignored that completely. What happened? Nothing. That answer has never meant nothing in the history of intelligent life. He crouched beside her carefully. Heat radiated from her body in waves now, far stronger than before. Tiny beads of moisture shimmered across her pale skin despite the cool room temperature. Veilira looked away immediately. "The storm is peaking," she said quietly. "My nervous system is reacting." Lucas studied her for a moment. "This is the hormonal thing you mentioned?" She nodded once, visibly embarrassed. "I isolated myself before it worsened." "Why?" Veilira laughed weakly under her breath. "Because my species is not calm during this phase, Lucas. You still have not scared me. That is because you do not understand what this feels like." Her breathing trembled again. Everything becomes louder. Emotions intensify until physical contact feels necessary for stability. Lucas sat quietly beside her for a second while thunder rolled overhead. He noticed claw marks lightly scratched into the floor beside her hand. Not dangerous. Controlled. Like she had been fighting herself for hours already. "So let me get this straight," he said gently. "You locked yourself in here alone because you were afraid of making me uncomfortable." Veilira closed her eyes. "Yes." Lucas exhaled slowly through his nose. Then, before overthinking it, he removed his jacket and draped it carefully around her shoulders. Veilira froze instantly. "Lucas, you are shaking. You should not touch me right now. I handed you a jacket, not a marriage proposal." A weak laugh escaped her despite herself. The sound eased something in the room immediately. Lucas leaned back against the bed frame beside her, giving her space while remaining close enough for warmth to reach her. "Humans do this too, you know," he said quietly. "Not the glowing part, but isolation when things hurt." Veilira looked at him carefully through strands of silver hair. "And what helps humans?" Lucas thought about that question longer than expected. Finally, he answered honestly. "Usually somebody staying." Silence settled softly between them after that. Outside, rain hammered endlessly against the station roof while neon lightning painted shifting colors across the walls. Veilira's breathing slowly steadied beside him. Her shoulders loosened slightly beneath his jacket. After several quiet minutes, she spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. "You smell calm." Lucas blinked once. "A what?" A faint embarrassed glow crossed beneath her skin. "Our senses are different during storms." Lucas stared at her before laughing softly under his breath. "Well," he murmured, "that might be the strangest compliment I have ever received." And for the first time that night, Veilira leaned her head lightly against the edge of the bed beside him instead of pulling away. The storm lasted all night. Lucas eventually lost track of time listening to rain hammer against the station roof, while neon lightning crawled endlessly across the clouds outside. The small room remained dim and warm around them, filled with the soft hiss of heating pipes and the quiet rhythm of Veilira's breathing beside him. At some point she had stopped trembling. That alone felt like a victory. Lucas sat with his back against the bed frame, while Veilira rested near him on the floor wrapped loosely in his jacket. Every few minutes the silver glow beneath her skin pulsed softly in response to distant thunder. He had never seen biology react to emotion so visibly before. It fascinated him more than it should have. "You are still awake," Veilira murmured eventually without opening her eyes. "So are you. My species does not sleep well during storms." Lucas rubbed tired fingers through his damp hair. "Humans do not sleep well in rooms where the walls are glowing." A soft breath of laughter escaped her. Better this time. Less strained. Silence settled again for a while before Veilira finally spoke in a quieter voice. "Why are you being kind to me?" Lucas blinked once at the question. "That seems dramatic. I gave you a jacket. You stayed." Her golden eyes lifted toward him now, reflecting faint amber light through the darkness. Most outsiders avoid us during storm season. Many are afraid. Lucas shrugged lightly. You have not given me a reason to leave. Veilira studied him carefully as if trying to solve something impossible. You are either unusually brave or very reckless. Probably both. Another faint smile touched her lips before fading again. Lucas noticed then how exhausted she looked beneath the silver glow. Not physically tired, emotionally worn thin, like someone who had spent years holding herself together through sheer discipline alone. How long have you run this in? He asked quietly. 9 years. That is a long time. Yes. By yourself. Veilira hesitated before nodding once. Lucas frowned slightly. No family. Her gaze drifted toward the storm outside. Not anymore. Something heavy moved beneath those 3 words. Lucas recognized it immediately because he carried the same thing around himself. Loss had a certain silence to it. I am sorry, he said gently. Veilira looked surprised by the response. You do not even know what happened. Does not really matter. He leaned his head back against the bed frame. Missing people still hurts. For several seconds Veilira simply stared at him. Then slowly, almost cautiously, she shifted closer along the floor until her shoulder rested lightly against the edge of his knee beneath the hanging blanket. The contact was careful, asking rather than taking. Lucas did not move away. Outside, lightning flashed again. This time Veilira flinched visibly at the thunder that followed. Lucas glanced down at her. You okay? Storm pressure. Her voice sounded smaller now. Honest. It amplifies emotional memory. Lucas looked at her quietly for a moment before offering his hand without really thinking about it. Here. Veilira stared at his open palm like it frightened her more than the storm. Lucas, relax. Humans do this all the time. Touch during emotional distress is considered deeply intimate among my kind. Lucas immediately started pulling his hand back. Okay, wow. That feels like information I should have gotten sooner. But before he could fully retreat, Veilira reached forward carefully and placed her hand against his. Heat spread instantly through both of them. Her fingers were longer than his, trembling faintly against his skin. The silver glow beneath her body brightened sharply for one startled second before slowly softening into something calmer. Veilira exhaled shakily. Lucas felt it too somehow. Not attraction exactly. Relief. Like tension unwinding from a room that had been locked too long. Veilira lowered her eyes toward their joined hands. Your heartbeat is steady, she whispered. Lucas smiled faintly. Years of terrible life decisions. Another small laugh escaped her. Then, after a long silence filled only by rain and breathing, Veilira finally admitted the thing she had clearly been avoiding all night. I have never held a male's hand before. Lucas stared at her in surprise. Seriously? She nodded once without looking up. Not willingly. Something tightened painfully in his chest at the quiet sadness behind those words. Lucas gently adjusted his grip around her trembling fingers. Well, he murmured softly. For the record, I think you are doing great. And somewhere beneath the endless storm outside, Veilira's eyes finally filled with tears she no longer tried to hide. Lucas did not realize he had fallen asleep until he woke to warmth pressed lightly against his shoulder and the distant sound of machinery groaning beneath the station floor. For one disoriented second, he almost pulled away on instinct. Then memory returned slowly through the haze. The storm, Veilira, the small room upstairs. His hand was still loosely wrapped around hers. Morning light filtered dimly through the narrow curtains, though morning, on the mining moon, looked more like endless twilight beneath thick electric clouds. Rain still drifted across the window in silver sheets, softer now, but steady. Veilira remained asleep beside him on the floor, her silver hair spilling loosely across his jacket, while faint pulses of light shimmered beneath her pale skin. Without the tension in her posture, she looked younger somehow. Peaceful. Lucas carefully shifted against the bed frame, trying not to wake her. The movement failed immediately. Veilira's eyes opened at once. Golden. Alert. Then confused. Then embarrassed, all within the span of 2 heartbeats. She sat upright too quickly, pulling her hand back. I apologize, she said quietly. I did not intend to. Relax. Lucas interrupted gently, rubbing sleep from his eyes. You fell asleep. Not exactly a federal crime. Veilira looked down toward the floor, visibly unsettled by something deeper than embarrassment. "You should not have stayed with me through the storm peak." Lucas frowned. "You keep saying things like that after nothing bad happens. That does not mean it was safe." Before he could answer, a loud metallic chime echoed suddenly through the hallway outside. Veolyra stiffened instantly. Her expression changed so fast it startled him. Calm vanished completely. Fear replaced it. "What?" Lucas asked sharply. Veolyra stood immediately. "Stay here." That is not an answer. Another chime sounded. Longer this time. Somewhere downstairs, voices began rising rapidly beneath the floorboards. Lucas caught movement through the small window as figures gathered outside in the rain below. Veolyra crossed toward the door, but hesitated before opening it. Her hand tightened visibly around the frame. Lucas stood too. "Veolyra." She looked back at him slowly. "There is something I did not explain clearly." Lucas already hated the sound of that sentence. "Okay." Veolyra lowered her eyes briefly before speaking. "When an unattached male rents a room during storm season, local innkeepers are permitted to file temporary protective claims." Lucas blinked once. Protective claims. It is meant to prevent conflict among colony residents. "Veolyra." Her voice grew quieter. "I registered you under my household authority last night." Silence hit the room hard enough to feel physical. Lucas stared at her for several long seconds, waiting for the joke that never came. "You what?" "It was the safest option available." "You signed paperwork on me?" "Temporary legal protection, yes." Lucas let out one stunned laugh and ran a hand through his hair. "You have got to be kidding me. If I had not done it, another resident could have challenged for guardianship during the storm." "Guardianship?" Lucas repeated incredulously. "I am a 34-year-old cargo pilot, not a lost dog." Veolyra flinched slightly at the anger in his voice. "I know that. Do you?" He stepped away from the bed now, pulse rising hard in his throat. "Because this suddenly sounds a lot less like protection and a lot more like ownership." Veolyra's expression tightened with genuine hurt. "That is not how I see you." "Maybe not, but you still made the choice for me." The room fell painfully quiet after that. Outside, rainwater hissed against hot machinery, while distant voices continued rising downstairs. Veolyra looked shaken now in a completely different way than before. Not hormonal. Emotional. "Human males do not usually object to protection contracts," she whispered. Lucas stared at her in disbelief. "Well, this one does." Veolyra's golden eyes lowered slowly. "I was trying to keep you safe." Lucas exhaled sharply through his nose and looked away toward the storm outside, because part of him already knew she believed that completely. That somehow made it worse. After several long seconds, he asked quietly, "How long does this contract last?" Veolyra hesitated. 7 days. Lucas turned back toward her immediately. 7 what? Another loud metallic chime echoed through the inn below. Then a female voice shouted clearly enough to reach the hallway outside the room. "Veolyra, open the door. The bonded male belongs to colony law now." The shouting downstairs grew louder by the second. Lucas could hear boots against metal stairs now, fast and uneven beneath the constant roar of rain outside. Every instinct he had, developed hauling freight through unstable systems, screamed the same thing at once. "Leave. Immediately." He turned toward Veolyra sharply. "Tell me right now that nobody down there thinks they own me." Veolyra's silence answered before her voice did. Lucas laughed once under his breath, but there was no humor in it anymore. "Unbelievable." Another voice echoed from below. "The claim must be verified publicly." He entered under storm law. "Bring him downstairs." Lucas stepped back from the door, jaw tightening hard enough to ache. He had spent years avoiding corporate contracts, border politics, and every system that treated people like inventory. Somehow he had managed to fly directly into the one colony in the galaxy where a room rental came with legal attachment paperwork. Veolyra moved toward him carefully. "Lucas, listen to me." "No, you listen to me." His voice stayed low but sharp. "I trusted you." The words hit her visibly. Her golden eyes lowered immediately. "I know. Do you?" He pointed toward the shouting downstairs. "Because this feels a lot less like protection and a lot more like being trapped." Veolyra flinched again, but this time she did not defend herself immediately. That silence told him more than excuses would have. Outside the narrow window, neon lightning flashed across the storm clouds, washing silver light through the room. Lucas suddenly noticed how pale she looked beneath the glow. Frightened. Not of him, of what was happening downstairs. If I cancel the contract now, she said quietly, colony law will classify you as unclaimed. Lucas folded his arms tightly. Good. No. Her voice cracked unexpectedly. You do not understand. She stepped closer now, visibly struggling to stay calm while voices pounded louder below them. Unclaimed males on frontier stations are transferred into communal jurisdiction during peak storms. Lucas stared at her. Transferred into what? Protective holding. That sounds fake. It is not. Lucas rubbed both hands over his face hard. I cannot believe this is real. Veilira looked almost desperate now. Most colonies are not like this. That is not helping. A loud metallic slam echoed through the and beneath them, followed by rising voices. Somebody downstairs was arguing now. Veilira inhaled sharply and moved toward the door again before stopping herself. Lucas noticed her hands trembling harder than before. Why are they pushing this so hard? He asked. Veilira hesitated too long. Lucas immediately narrowed his eyes. Veilira. Her answer came almost too quietly to hear. Because human males are rare. Lucas blinked once. Rare enough that colony councils regulate them. Rare enough that some systems treat them as strategic assets. The room went silent except for the storm. Lucas slowly turned away toward the rain-streaked window because suddenly everything about the way people stared at him downstairs made horrible sense. Not attraction. Scarcity. Ownership disguised as protection. For the first time since landing on the station, genuine anger settled cold and steady in his chest. I am not an asset, he said quietly. Veilira looked at him with obvious pain in her expression. I know that. Then why does everybody here keep acting like I belong to someone? Veilira had no answer. Another heavy knock shook the hallway outside. Veilira, a woman shouted through the door. Open this now before enforcement arrives. Lucas looked toward the entrance sharply. Enforcement? Veilira's breathing turned uneven again. The colony registry monitors storm contracts. You mean the government? Yes. Lucas let out a stunned breath. Fantastic. Fantastic. He grabbed his jacket from the bed immediately. Veilira stepped toward him. What are you doing? Leaving? You cannot. Watch me. Lucas, the storm outside is still active. I would rather take my chances with the weather than whatever this is. Veilira caught his wrist before he reached the door. The moment her skin touched his, both of them froze. Heat spread sharply through the room again, stronger now beneath the tension. Veilira's voice dropped into something softer. Hurt. Please, she whispered. I was trying to protect you. Lucas looked down at her trembling hand around his wrist, then slowly back into her frightened golden eyes. And for the first time since this nightmare started, he realized something worse than being trapped. Veilira was afraid he would leave. The knock against the hallway door came again, harder this time. Metal groaned beneath the impact. Lucas instinctively stepped closer to the window while Veilira remained frozen near him, her hand still lightly wrapped around his wrist. Outside, rain swept sideways across the station streets in glowing silver waves while emergency lights flashed through the storm below. He could see figures gathering near the entrance now, more than before. How many people know about this contract? He asked quietly. Veilira swallowed once. By now, most of the district. Lucas laughed under his breath again, exhausted disbelief mixing with rising anger. Wonderful. I officially hate this planet. Another voice echoed through the hallway. Veilira, registry officers are inbound. Her grip on Lucas tightened instinctively before she let go completely. Fear crossed her expression again, sharper this time. They arrived faster than expected. You think? Lucas grabbed his duffel bag from beside the bed and slung it over one shoulder. I am leaving before your government decides I qualify as public property. Veilira stepped directly in front of the door. If you go outside right now, they will find you within minutes. Then move. She did not. Rain and thunder filled the silence between them. Lucas stared at her for several long seconds. I trusted you, he said again, quieter this time. Veilira's eyes closed briefly, like the words physically hurt. I know. Then why does it feel like everybody here sees me as something to own? Veilira looked down at her trembling hands before answering. Because this colony forgot how to separate affection from fear a long time ago. Lucas frowned despite himself. That answer sounded too honest to ignore. Before he could respond, a sudden alarm chirped from somewhere downstairs, followed by hurried shouting. Veolyra stiffened instantly. "No," she whispered. Lucas noticed the change immediately. "What happened?" Veolyra crossed the room quickly toward a small wall terminal beside the door. A holographic warning flashed across the screen in bright red symbols Lucas could not read. Her face lost all color beneath the silver glow. "The registry transferred your contract." "Transferred?" Veolyra looked back at him in horror. "Someone challenged my claim authority." Lucas stared at her. "I have absolutely no idea what those words mean." "It means colony enforcement can legally relocate you until ownership disputes are resolved." Silence crashed through the room. Then Lucas slowly said, "Ownership disputes." Veolyra's voice cracked slightly. "Lucas, no, absolutely not." He backed away from the door now, pulse pounding hard in his ears. "You do not get to keep using that word like this is normal." Heavy footsteps thundered suddenly through the hallway outside. Multiple voices. Official. Controlled. Veolyra moved instinctively between Lucas and the entrance. "Stay behind me." Lucas blinked at her. "You cannot possibly think I am staying calm right now. Please." Something desperate flickered in her eyes. "Just let me speak first." A loud mechanical click echoed from the hallway lock. Then a calm female voice spoke through the sealed door. "By order of Colony Registry Authority, bonded male designation transfer is now active. Resident Veolyra, stand aside for processing." Lucas felt cold settle deep in his stomach despite the heat in the room. Bonded male designation. Like he was livestock being inventoried. Veolyra's breathing turned visibly uneven. "I will not release him," she said firmly through the door. Silence followed briefly. Then the same voice answered, calmer than before. "Non-compliance escalates reassignment risk." Lucas looked sharply toward Veolyra. Reassignment. She did not answer immediately. That terrified him more than anything else so far. Veolyra. Her golden eyes finally met his. "Some colonies auction temporary contracts during major storms." Lucas went completely still. Outside, thunder rolled low across the station while neon lightning flashed through the curtains. He suddenly understood everything. The staring downstairs, the possessiveness, the fear in Veolyra's voice. He was not a traveler here. He was a resource. The lock on the hallway door began disengaging with a sharp electronic hiss. Veolyra moved. In front of him instantly, silver light surging visibly beneath her skin. "Do not let them separate us," she whispered. Lucas stared at her in disbelief. "Us?" The door slid open. 3 armored registry officers stood waiting beneath cold white corridor lights, while rainwater dripped from dark cloaks onto the floor. The tallest officer looked directly past Veolyra toward Lucas with clinical focus. Not curiosity, not attraction. Assessment. "Human male designation confirmed," she announced evenly. "Transfer custody authorized." And for the first time since arriving on the station, Lucas Reed truly understood what it felt like to stop being treated as a person. The hallway lights reflected coldly across the registry officer's dark armor, while rain hissed through an open vent somewhere deeper in the station. None of the women stepped inside the room immediately. They simply watched Lucas with the same detached focus people used when inspecting cargo shipments. That frightened him more than open hostility would have. The tallest officer lifted a small scanning device toward him. A pale blue beam passed briefly across his face and chest. "Identity confirmed," she stated calmly. "Human male genetic profile verified." Lucas stared at her in disbelief. "You know where I come from? Scanning people without permission is considered incredibly rude." The officer ignored him completely. "Transfer vehicle is waiting." Veolyra stepped further in front of him. "He is under my protection. Your claim has been contested by district authority." "On what grounds?" "Emotional instability during peak storm cycle." Veolyra's silver glow flickered sharply beneath her skin. "That is not legal. Neither is withholding an unregistered compatible male from colony allocation review." Lucas pinched the bridge of his nose hard enough to hurt. "Every sentence you people say somehow gets worse." Another officer finally looked toward him directly. "You will be transported to temporary holding until your assignment status is finalized." Lucas lowered his hand slowly. "Assignment?" The woman nodded once. "Your biological compatibility index qualifies you for protected residency placement." Lucas laughed once in complete disbelief. Protected residency placement sounds exactly like something invented by people trying very hard not to say imprisonment. Veolira glanced back toward him, pain visible in her expression. Lucas. No. He stepped forward now despite the officers watching him carefully. I am done pretending this is normal. His voice stayed calm, but anger burned beneath every word now. I came here looking for a room, not government ownership paperwork. The lead officer's tone never changed. Your distress is understandable. Many males experience confusion during initial transfer processing. That sentence hit harder than any threat could have. Many males. Like this had happened before. Lucas suddenly felt sick. He looked toward Veolira slowly. You knew this could happen. Her silence answered immediately. Rain hammered harder outside, while warning sirens echoed faintly through distant station corridors. Veolira's golden eyes filled with guilt. I thought the contract would keep you hidden until the storm ended. But you still signed it without asking me. Yes. Lucas turned away sharply, jaw tightening hard enough to ache. For a moment nobody moved. Then the lead officer stepped forward slightly. Human Lucas Reed, please accompany us peacefully. Lucas looked back at her with exhausted disbelief. You keep saying peacefully like I am choosing between transportation options. Veolira suddenly moved. Fast, not aggressive, desperate. She stepped directly between Lucas and the officers again, silver light visibly pulsing beneath her skin now. I revoke the transfer. The lead officer remained calm. Revocation denied. He is not property. The hallway went completely silent after that. Even the officers seemed briefly surprised. Lucas looked sharply toward Veolira. Her breathing trembled visibly now, but she held her ground. He is a person, she said again, stronger this time. And he did not consent to this contract. The lead officer's expression hardened slightly for the first time. You are emotionally compromised. Probably, Veolira admitted quietly. But I am still right. Lucas felt something twist painfully in his chest, hearing her say it aloud. Because somehow this frightened alien woman understood the problem better than her entire society did. Another alarm echoed suddenly through the station. Louder now. Urgent. One of the officers touched the communicator near her ear immediately. Her posture stiffened. External breach reported near docking sector 4, she announced. Unauthorized transport activity detected. Lucas frowned. What does that mean? The officer ignored him, already speaking rapidly into her communicator. Veolira looked toward the hallway in confusion. Nobody uses docking sector 4 during storm lockdown. Then the entire station lights flickered violently once. Twice. Emergency red lighting flooded the corridor instantly. Somewhere below them, people began shouting. The lead officer cursed softly under her breath before turning sharply toward Lucas again. New directive, she said immediately. The human male must be secured now. Lucas took one instinctive step backward. Veolira's silver glow brightened sharply beside him. Then, from somewhere downstairs beneath the chaos and alarms, a new voice echoed upward through the inn. Male. Human. Lucas Reed. Silence crashed through the hallway. Lucas stared toward the staircase in shock, because he had not heard another human voice in almost 3 months. The sound of another human voice hit Lucas harder than the alarms. For one disorienting second, he thought exhaustion had finally broken something inside his brain. Then the voice came again from downstairs, louder this time beneath the chaos echoing through the inn. Lucas, get your ass down here right now. Every registry officer in the hallway turned sharply toward the staircase. Veolira looked just as stunned as Lucas felt. You know another human on this station? She asked quietly. No, Lucas's pulse quickened hard in his chest. At least I do not think so. The lead officer touched her communicator immediately. Unregistered Terran presence confirmed, she announced. Seal lower exits. A deep mechanical clang echoed somewhere below as emergency barriers activated throughout the building. Then came the sound of hurried footsteps climbing fast toward the second floor. Lucas instinctively stepped closer to Veolira while the officers repositioned themselves in the hallway. Red emergency lighting painted sharp shadows across metal walls and rainwater still dripping from the officers' cloaks. The footsteps stopped abruptly just beyond the stairwell. Then a man appeared around the corner wearing a dark environmental jacket soaked with rain. Mid-30s. Broad shoulders. Crooked nose that looked broken at least once. Human. Definitely human. He spotted Lucas instantly and let out a visible breath of relief. There you are. Lucas stared at him. Do I know you? Nope. The man glanced toward the registry officers blocking the hallway. But I know exactly what is happening to you. The lead officer stepped forward sharply. State your identity and registration clearance. The stranger ignored her completely, eyes staying fixed on Lucas. Name is Marcus Vale, independent freight runner. I docked here 3 years ago during storm season. Something cold settled into Lucas's stomach immediately. Marcus gave a humorless laugh. Yeah, you are making the same face I did. Veilira's expression shifted with sudden understanding. You escaped. Marcus looked toward her briefly. Barely. Silence fell hard across the hallway. Even the officers seemed uneasy now. Marcus leaned against the wall slightly, breathing harder than he tried to show. Listen carefully, Lucas. Registry processing does not end with temporary holding. Lucas frowned. Then what happens? Marcus looked toward the officers before answering. They assign you. The word landed like metal hitting concrete. Some guys get attached to colony households. Some get traded between districts under compatibility agreements. Depends how valuable your genetic score is. Lucas stared at him in disbelief. That cannot possibly be legal. Marcus laughed quietly under his breath. Out here, legal just means enough people stopped arguing. Veilira looked shaken now in a completely different way than before. That is not what the registry claims. Marcus met her eyes directly. No offense, lady, but your registry has been lying to lonely colonies for years. One of the officers stepped forward again, visibly losing patience. This conversation is unauthorized. The Terran mail will be transferred immediately. Marcus straightened slowly. Yeah, about that. He reached into his jacket and removed a small blinking device no larger than his palm. Every officer in the hallway stiffened instantly. Docking Sector 4, Marcus said calmly. The breach alarms were me. Lucas blinked once. You caused this. Had to get your attention somehow. Marcus tossed the device lightly between his hands. Human transport crews monitor frontier systems for missing registry cases now. Veilira stared at him in shock. There are others? More every year. Rain hammered against the station outside, while warning sirens continued pulsing through the halls. Lucas suddenly felt dizzy trying to process all of it. Marcus looked back toward him carefully now. I can get you off this station before registry lockdown finishes. The offer hung heavily in the red-lit hallway. Freedom. Escape. Simple. Easy. Lucas should have accepted immediately. Instead, his eyes drifted toward Veilira, standing beside him beneath the flashing emergency lights. She looked devastated already, like she knew exactly what his answer should be. Marcus followed his gaze and sighed softly under his breath. Ah, he murmured. That complicates things. Lucas rubbed tired hands over his face again. You think. Another alarm blared suddenly through the station, louder than before. Then the hallway lights flickered violently once. Marcus's expression hardened immediately. Decision time, Lucas. Veilira lowered her eyes toward the floor and whispered something so quietly Lucas almost missed it. You should go. The station alarm screamed through the hallways while red emergency lights pulsed across rain-soaked metal walls. Marcus stood near the stairwell, gripping the blinking disruptor device in one hand, tense and ready to move. The registry officers had stopped advancing now, their attention divided between the external docking breach and the increasingly unstable situation upstairs. But Lucas barely noticed any of them anymore. He was looking at Veilira. She stood motionless beneath. The flashing red lights, silver glow flickering weakly beneath her pale skin while rainwater hissed against the windows behind her. You should go, she repeated softly without meeting his eyes. Lucas exhaled slowly through his nose. A week ago, he would have left without hesitation. Hell, an hour ago he probably would have. But somewhere between the storm and the sleepless night, and the way Veilira looked at him like kindness was something fragile she had almost forgotten existed, things had become complicated in ways he did not fully understand. Marcus stepped closer impatiently. Lucas, we have maybe 3 minutes before the registry seals the docks again. Lucas nodded faintly without looking away from Veilira. I know. The lead registry officer touched her communicator sharply. Transfer authorization remains active. The Terran mail is still registered colony property. Lucas turned toward her immediately. I am going to stop you right there. His voice stayed calm now. Tired. Certain. I am not property. The officer opened her mouth to respond, but Lucas continued before she could. Not yours. Not the registry's. Not anybody's. Silence settled hard across the hallway. Even Marcus looked slightly surprised by the steadiness in Lucas's voice. Veilira slowly lifted her eyes toward him again. Lucas glanced at her briefly before looking back toward the officers. "You people built laws around fear," he said quietly. "Fear of being alone. Fear of losing each other. I get that. But somewhere along the way you forgot that caring about someone and controlling them are not the same thing." The hallway remained completely silent except for distant thunder rolling beneath the station. One of the officers looked visibly unsettled now. Another avoided meeting his eyes entirely. Veilira stared at Lucas like she had never seen him clearly before this moment. Marcus finally muttered under his breath, "Damn, there is the human part." Lucas ignored him gently. He stepped toward Veilira now, stopping close enough to feel the warmth radiating softly from her skin. "You made a mistake," he said quietly. Pain crossed her face immediately. "I know, but you also tried to protect me." Veilira swallowed hard. "I never wanted you to feel trapped." Lucas gave a faint, tired smile. Little late for that. To his surprise, a weak laugh escaped her through tears she was no longer hiding. Outside, the storm finally began weakening. Rain still fell across the neon streets below, but softer now. Slower. Marcus glanced toward the stairwell again. "Lucas, last chance." Lucas looked toward him carefully. Freedom waited downstairs. A ship. Open space. Simplicity. The smart choice. But when he turned back toward Veilira standing beneath the fading storm lights, he saw something else too. Not obsession. Not ownership. Fear. Hope. Loneliness so deep it had reshaped an entire society around avoiding it. And despite everything, she had still stood between him and the registry officers when it mattered. Lucas released a long breath. Then he slowly lowered his duffel bag onto the floor beside him. Marcus blinked once. "You are kidding." "Probably," Lucas admitted. Veilira stared at the bag like she could not quite believe it was real. "Lucas," he looked directly into her golden eyes. "I am staying because I choose to stay. Understand?" Veilira's breathing trembled visibly. She nodded once. Slowly, carefully, like the concept itself still felt fragile in her hands. Choice. Not instinct. Not law. Choice. The station alarms finally began to fade into silence around them. One by one, the registry officers stepped back without another word. Even they seemed unsure what to do with a decision nobody forced. Marcus rubbed tired fingers over his face before giving Lucas an incredulous shake of his head. "Humans," he muttered quietly. "Absolutely insane species." Lucas grinned faintly. "Yeah, we hear that a lot." A few minutes later, after the officers and alarms and chaos had finally disappeared, Lucas stood beside the narrow window in Veilira's room, watching the neon storm dissolve into soft silver rain across the mining colony below. Behind him, Veilira approached slowly. Careful, uncertain. "Would you stay tonight?" she asked quietly. "If I asked as myself instead of your keeper?" Lucas turned toward her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he stepped closer and gently took her trembling hand in his again. Warmth spread softly between them beneath the fading storm. "Yeah," he whispered. "I think I would." And for the first time in many years, Veilira finally slept beside someone who stayed because he wanted to.